Namaskar. Welcome friends to this Roots in Kashmir live event. My name is Sushil Pandit and I am today here to talk about what happened earlier this month with respect to Kashmir. Kashmir, as you know, has gone through some incredible changes that were never expected, that were always considered virtually impossible. But on August 5, our government showed tremendous political will and courage of conviction to make some of the most awaited, long-awaited decisions. One such decision was neutering of Article 370 and thus bringing Kashmir into the mainstream of India, bringing this state, erstwhile state, under the jurisdiction of Parliament and extending Indian Constitution without any exceptions and caveats to this territory. This had become necessary because Kashmir had begun to face jihad in its most virulent form, most violent form for the last 30 years. And all sorts of concessions, all sorts of placatory measures, all kinds of surrender and ransom did not yield the necessary results. In fact, things went from bad to worse. 30 years ago, it also saw a genocide of Hindus in the Kashmir Valley. The entire community of Kashmiri Hindus, also known as Kashmiri Pandits, were expelled from the valley brutally, with unprecedented violence. Violence against women and children, violence against old men, violence against a community who were the original inhabitants and lived there thousands of years before the advent of Islam. That August 5 was considered a watershed event in the 70-year history of independent India. And much was expected to follow from these events. You must understand, neutering of Article 370 meant lifting of all the barriers. Barriers to citizenship, barriers to settling down in Kashmir, barriers to seeking education in the state institutions of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir, barriers to owning immovable property in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And not only these barriers were removed, the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir was turned into two standalone union territories. The Union Territory of Ladakh and Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. In one fell swoop, all those deprivations, rights, privileges that were available to citizens of India across the length and breadth of the country were extended now to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And likewise, to the permanent residents of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, all the rights and privileges under the Constitution of India were now available. Some such privileges included even the fundamental rights which were not available in the Constitution of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. With extension of the Indian Constitution to the state of Jammu and Kashmir, these privileges now were available to the citizens of the Jammu and Kashmir state as well. What happened recently? On 31st of March, a gazetted notification was issued by the Government of India. It did two things. One, it defined the domiciled citizens of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. After August 5, Jammu and Kashmir residents, Jammu and Kashmir's citizens of India were at par with the citizens of rest of India. On March 31st, that changed. Again, a privileged class was created in the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir, defining and thus creating a special category of citizens there who lived there for 15 years or more. And they were called the domiciled citizens. The second step that was announced in that notification was that such citizens will have an exclusive right over class 4, level 4 jobs in the state government. You must remember, entire country was in a lockdown. There was no other news in newspapers or television channels. This was an unprecedented situation where the entire country, its civil aviation, its transport, surface transport, its government offices, its private institutions, its shops and markets, everything was shut down. People were confined to their homes. Never have we seen such a situation, and in the middle of this, government issued a notification creating a special class of citizens in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And not just that, it also gave them a privilege of an exclusive right on level 4 jobs. The import of such a decision was yet to sink in. Within 3 days, a gazette notification dated April 4 came up, which made amends in the 31st March notification and substituted the phrase level 4 jobs with all the jobs. Which means now, in the state government, all the jobs were reserved for only those who lived in the state for at least 15 years continuously. Now, what does it mean? First and foremost, Kashmiri Pandits, Kashmiri Hindus, were wondering what is happening. Is there a mischief? The wording of this notification said that those migrants, remember, we the victims of genocide, the victims of religio-ethnic cleansing, were incidentally called migrants. It said those migrants who are registered in Jammu, and did not mention the migrants who were registered outside the state of Jammu and Kashmir, or those who were not registered at all, and caused some confusion as to what would be their status. It also created other categories, such as those central government employees who lived in the state for at least 10 years, or those students who studied in the state for at least 7 years, or passed out of state schools for their 10th and 12th exams. Thank God for small mercies. But I must clarify here that this mischief either stands nullified because there are other subclauses and confusing explanations which either obviate the need, because there is a PM's package on jobs under a special SRO, SRO 412. It doesn't apply to those. And then it is also mentioned that the children of such parents who lived there for 15 years will be deemed as domiciled. So in a roundabout manner, most of Kashmiri Hindus are covered. Also, there are different definitions of migrants under different acts. They ought to be ironed out and interpreted in the light of this notification. And probably even that will take care of those who tend to miss out. But what about those Kashmiri Pandits who left Kashmir in earlier exoduses? Mind you, in the last 600 years, there have been 7 exoduses. The 1990 exodus was the 7th. A whole lot of Kashmiris settled in UP, in Madhya Pradesh, in Rajasthan, in Punjab, in various parts of India, when they had to flee Kashmir for their lives in the Middle Ages. Will they be extended this privilege of being Kashmiris? Or is it bringing back some of the barriers that 370 had erected and kept rest of India outside the then state of Jammu and Kashmir? I think government owes an explanation on this front. But we Kashmiri Hindus or Dogras of Jammu needn't take any great joy in this, because these privileges were available to us even under 370. The Dogras of Jammu and Kashmiri Hindus were as privileged under Article 370 because we were state subjects. But did we get the so-called promised benefits and privileges under this article? No. On the contrary, the stranglehold of the valley, the majority community in the valley, the politics of the valley, the bureaucracy which was valley-centric, the entire policy structure and establishment which was rooted in the valley, made sure that Article 370 accrued benefits only and only to a small section of Kashmiri Muslims, primarily, and specifically discriminated against the Hindus, the Sikhs, the Buddhists, the Christians, to the extent of pushing them to seek avenues of education and employment outside the state. So if you think that these notifications are going to create a comfort zone for us, think again. It is a comfort zone that was available to you under Article 370. So what has happened? Ever since Article 370 was neutered and the state of Jammu and Kashmir was reorganized into two standalone union territories, Union Territory of Ladakh and Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, the cabal from the valley has been pushing the government in the center to undo some of these changes. And government in Delhi has been on a back foot from day one. If you don't remember, let me jog your memory that even when the state on the floor of Parliament, it was suggested that restoration of statehood to Jammu and Kashmir could be. It betrayed a tentative. It showed some kind of willingness to be nudged into reviewing these decisions. It almost invited pressure from the valley to undo some of these decisions. And quick on the uptake, the busybodies from the valley got active. And what we have seen since August 5 are a series of missteps which have put the processes started on August 5 into a reverse gear. And let me recount some of them. When the trouble hit the ceiling and Pakistan made expected noises and China blistered, we very resolutely said, this is our internal affair. You mind your own business. When European Union expressed concern, our external affairs minister went to Brussels in September and this is our internal affair and you have no business poking your nose into it. But very next month, we invited more than 24 European members of Parliament to Kashmir to have a look at our internal affair. We violated the red lines we ourselves had drawn for the outside world. As if that wasn't enough, in December again, we took a batch of envoys, foreign envoys based in Delhi, to show them around the valley, give them a boat ride, get them to meet some curated delegations. And then again another batch in January. What happened to the insistence that whatever we did in Kashmir and whatever happened in Kashmir was our internal affair? And it will stay that way. Not just this. In February To be precise, on 10th of February, the Home Ministry announced that elections will take place. All those local bodies and panchayats where the elections could not be held because no nominations were filed, there were vacancies, the chairman of the block committees were due to be elected. All those elections were announced on 10th of February. Then on 13th, 15th and 17th of February, an elaborate schedule was announced as to when the voting will take place, when the nominations could be filed. And guess what? While on 17th of February, last of the schedule was announced, on 18th of February, those elections were called off. Even while you were saying everything was normal in Kashmir, and indeed, things were normal, you withdrew. You withdrew your own notification. Two things come to mind. Either one limb of the government was not talking to the other limb, taking permissions or approvals, and it looked like a grand confusion, or somewhere within the apex of the government, at the very top, there were differences of opinion, or there was utter indifference in thinking through what is to be done. Both these conditions do not augur well. One more thing happened. Around the same time, a gentleman called Farooq Abdullah had been released. Just 3 days before his release, his Public Safety Act detention was extended by 6 months. But 3 days later, he was released unconditionally. Weeks before that, his favorite Amarjit Singh Dullat, former head of RAW and IB, had met him at his residence, and he couldn't have met him without the approval of the central government. So what is going on? While these parlays were on, a new ragtag party was propped up. The renegades from Congress, National Conference and PDP were stitched together under a name Apni Party by somebody who was the finance minister under Mehbooba Mufti government, who was considered Mr. Moneybags, had access to all bigwigs in the mainstream politics as well as Hurriyat, whose car was intercepted and was found to be full of RDX 3 years earlier. That man was propped up to form a new political party. And if there was any confusion about the blessings of Delhi, the Prime Minister, along with his large delegation, is given an audience. And it is much publicized through pictures. His delegation is also given an audience by the Home Minister with a lot of publicity. So what is happening? Are we seeing some kind of a retreat in Kashmir? Are we again giving concessions? Have indeed given some significant concessions? Are we recreating the conditions of Article 370, having withdrawn it with great fanfare last year? What is the reason? Why is this happening? Are the questions we must ask. Why are these usual suspects, these discredited, tainted politicians being propped up? Why the detained culprits of the carnage in Kashmir that has been witnessed over the last 30 years being released? And they don't look chastened at all. In fact, when they come out, instead of and patriotism, they are dictating terms. They are seeking reversal of decisions. Not just this. Another disturbing development took place earlier this month. After the August 5 decisions in the series of encounters that took place with militants, the earlier familiar spectacle of frenzied funerals delivering a halo to these killed militants and terrorists were missing. But for the first time in Sopore, we saw thousands gathered again after an encounter where bodies were delivered and a lockdown was violated, allowed to be violated. Is the government signaling the return of pre-August 5 Kashmir? Are we trying to make peace with those who we decided to take head-on on August 5? Is our leadership developing cold feet over the decisions they took on August 5? Are the moot points. Now, a lot of people will say that what is wrong with domicile? Good question. Aren't rest of the states in the country equipped with their own domicile laws? I have some information for you on that count. Yes, indeed, domicile is nothing unusual across Indian Union. In several states, there are domicile laws in place. How is it stacked up? To give you a brief insight, in Meghalaya, in Punjab, in Telangana and Chhattisgarh, the number of years for you to qualify as a domicile citizen are 0. In Meghalaya, Punjab, Telangana and Chhattisgarh. In these states, all you need is probably a panchayat, panch, sarpanch or some district officer to endorse your claim that you are a resident there. That's all. If you have an address, you live in that place, and he certifies to this claim, that's all you need. In Odisha, to qualify as a domiciled state citizen, 1 year of residence is enough. In UP, Bihar and Delhi, only 3 years. In Madhya Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh, 5 years. In Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, only 6 years. In Andhra Pradesh, only 7 years. In Gujarat, Rajasthan, Tripura, only 10 years. But in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, you give 15 years. Incidentally, if such a protection is needed between the two Union territories, you need it more in Ladakh than in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It is a much smaller population in much larger territory. And there is no gazette notification for Ladakh yet. So who's pushing you on Jammu and Kashmir? And when you actually come out with a notification on 31st August, who forced your hand to revise it and extend it to all the jobs instead of just level 4 jobs within 72 hours? I read some press reports that there was an uproar, a furor, a protest. Hello, it was a lockdown. Not a soul on the streets. Who was protesting? Where was the uproar? And since when, in 72 hours, you have started heeding a non-existent uproar and then eating crow over your own announcements? A gazetted notification is not an ordinary, everyday, commonplace notification. It's serious business. And if somebody forces your hand, and we know who that somebody is, that gentleman's name is Altaf Bukhari. Telephone calls. And the Raisina Hill stands in Shirshasana to make amends, to eat crow, and to look so sad. And if this is how you are going to let the cabal in Kashmir to claw back to its positions of preeminence, to dictating terms, and if India is seen to be back on its knees all over again, especially under this government, who took an amazing decision, a historic decision, an unprecedented decision, then what are we to understand? Who is advising on these matters? If Domicile Act is to be enforced in this manner, then how do you expect to change the situation on ground in Kashmir? As of now, only the definition of domicile is in place, and only a blanket reservation of all categories of jobs has been announced. What all is in the pipeline? Are you going to protect land, buildings, other immovable properties, farms and orchards, shops and offices? Are you going to also restrict licenses, businesses? Then what is left? I don't mind domicile enforced in vulnerable territories where populations have had a tough time and need protection. In Kashmir, there hasn't been such a situation. The per family employment in government has been the highest in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. You have a bloated bureaucracy. And yet, despite recruiting and offering jobs like some kind of largesse, like some kind of freebie over decades and decades to the detriment of minorities in Kashmir. If you go back to creating such a reservation, instead of loosening the stranglehold of jihad over Kashmir, you are reinforcing it. And who are you trying to please through this process? Who do you think is going to deliver Kashmir to you on a platter if you do their bidding in this manner? And why are you pushing these things through when rest of India is completely bogged down with a fight it has over a pandemic, when every other news is shut out from newspapers and television channels, when all you consume from morning till evening are the grim details, the overwhelming statistics? What was the pressure? What was the need to slip through these decisions? Literally robbing us blind. I think these are extremely important questions that we must ask of our leaders. These are extremely disturbing developments with respect to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Those who are trying to sell these decisions as some kind of a bonus to the community must be questioned. These bonuses have existed for us under Article 370 for 70 years, and we know what kind of a bonus were these. Today we do not need to think as a small Kashmiri Hindu community, but as larger India, future of India, interest of India. Because so long as India survives in Kashmir, we will stand to gain. If India is shut out of Kashmir, then nothing is going to help us. This is the litmus test. No small sop or crumb will ever substitute the larger national interest. So for Kashmiri Hindus living in exile, for Dogras of Jammu, for every patriotic Sikh, Christian, Muslim and Hindu of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir must reject this, because this seeks to consolidate and empower the jihad in Kashmir to the detriment of the patriots and suffering in Kashmir. And kindly think about Ladakh, because your slip is showing. If you really needed to do something in terms of offering a protective cover to any of these union territories, Ladakh had a better claim. It's more than a month and they're still waiting. You again reached out to your known baiters in Jammu and Kashmir, and you deprived Ladakh through your indifference and through your apathy. No amount of chorus of support from your cheerleaders in respective parties who have made a habit of applauding you for everything, irrespective of its impact on the country and on the state. For a change, start listening to independent voices. For a change, start consulting those who know. For a change, start engaging with those who you seek to help. Then work on such harebrained ideas and push us deeper into the swamp of uncertainty. Because now if we falter, now if we miss these opportunities, we don't think retrieval will be easy. This domicile notification is bringing back the draconian 370 back through the back door. That is how it ought to be treated. Nothing more. Thank you for your patience. And if there are any questions, I don't know if Anup has arranged for any interaction here. I'll try and answer.